My name is Natalie Brooks, 35 years old, an interior designer who built my own path in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was a Tuesday night when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom that stopped me cold. Don't call or come over. We're done. My heart sank, but I didn't cry or beg. I typed back 2 words. Got it. That was it. Years of pouring my heart and money into my family, covering Mom's medical bills, bailing out my brother's debts, keeping their restaurant afloat, gone in one text. I'd always been the odd one out, the one who chose design over their family business, the one they never saw as enough. But that text, it was a line in the sand. I wasn't going to chase them. By midnight, my phone was blowing up. Missed calls, voicemails, texts piling in. Mom's number flashed again and again, then my brother's, even Dad's. They were panicking, and I could guess why. I'd been their safety net for years, and now I was done. What happened next flipped everything I thought I knew about my family upside down. Growing up in Tulsa, our family seemed like the perfect American dream. My father ran a chain of restaurants, a local legend who turned a single diner into a thriving business. Mom gave up her banking career to stand by his side, managing the home and smoothing over his rough edges. My brother Ryan, 4 years younger, was the golden child, the one they pinned their hopes on to carry the family legacy. And me? I was Natalie Brooks, the odd one out, dreaming of spaces and colors, not menus and profit margins. From early on, Dad made it clear what he expected. The restaurants are our future, he'd say at dinner, his voice heavy with authority. You'll learn the business, Natalie. But I wasn't drawn to grease-stained aprons or balancing books. I wanted to design interiors, homes, places where people felt alive. By high school, I was sketching floor plans in notebooks, imagining sleek offices and cozy living rooms. When I told Dad I wanted to study interior design, he laughed. That's a hobby, not a career, he said, his tone sharp enough to cut. Mom stayed quiet, her eyes darting away, already choosing sides. At 17, I applied to a top art school in Chicago. When the acceptance letter came, I was over the moon. But Dad's reaction crushed me. If you're not joining the restaurants, you're on your own, he said, arms crossed. No tuition, no support. Mom nodded along, her silence louder than words. Ryan, barely 13, smirked like he'd won something. I felt like an outsider in my own home. Their favoritism toward him already carving a divide. I worked 2 jobs, waitressing and tutoring, to cover what scholarships didn't. Late nights, endless shifts, and a mountain of student loans got me through. Dad never asked how I managed, and Mom's occasional "I'm proud of you" felt hollow when she'd turn around and gush over Ryan's half-hearted attempts at helping with the restaurants. He could do no wrong, even when he skipped classes or botched orders. I remember one Christmas when I was home from college. Ryan forgot to lock up one of the restaurants, and a break-in cost thousands. Dad brushed it off. He's learning, he said, while I got a lecture for missing a family dinner to finish a design project. The distance grew. Dad's focus was always on Ryan, the son who'd inherit the empire, no matter how little he cared. Mom followed Dad's lead, her warmth reserved for him. I tried to stay close to her, calling on weekends, sharing my sketches, but her responses were short, distracted. Ryan's helping at the restaurant, she'd say, like it was a badge of honor. I wanted to scream, what about me? But I swallowed it, thinking one day they'd see my worth. By the time I graduated, the rift was undeniable. I'd built a name for myself in Tulsa, designing boutique hotels and upscale homes, but at family gatherings, it was always about the restaurants. When are you joining us? Dad would ask, like my career didn't exist. Ryan would chime in, joking about my fancy drawings, and Mom would smile, never defending me. Their favoritism wasn't just a feeling. It was a wall, and I was on the wrong side of it. Looking back, those years set the stage for everything that followed. I kept trying to prove myself, to earn a place in their world. But the harder I pushed, the clearer it became. They'd chosen Ryan, and I was just the backup plan they didn't want. Years passed, and I built something real, a studio of my own, Brooks Interiors, with clients who respected me more than my own parents ever did. Ironically, it was that success that brought them back. Mom called one evening out of nowhere, her voice soft and sugar-coated. "Sweetheart, could you help us redesign the restaurants? Your touch would make them look so much more modern." It had been over a year since she'd last spoken to me. I should have said no, but some part of me still wanted her approval. So I agreed. For 3 months, I poured my creativity into those restaurants. New color schemes, furniture layouts, and lighting concepts. Ryan barely showed up, yet somehow, when local magazines covered the redesign, the headline read, "Family Legacy Renewed by Ryan Brooks' Vision." My heart sank. He hadn't lifted a finger. I called Mom, voice shaking. "You know that's not true, right?" She hesitated, then said, "Sweetheart, you wouldn't want to embarrass your brother. Let him have this." That night I realized they didn't want me. They wanted what I could give, without the credit. I finished the project, sent my final invoice, and made a quiet promise to myself. I was done being their silent supporter. But the next blow came fast. A year later, I got engaged to Evan Hale, a photographer I met during a design project in Dallas. He was kind, calm, and supportive in a way I'd never experienced. When we announced our engagement, Mom's first response wasn't congratulations. "Where's the wedding?" she asked. "In Tulsa," I said. "We're keeping it small, close friends, a few family." She went silent for a moment. "Oh, well, we might not be able to make it," I froze. "What do you mean?" "Ryan's planning a trip to Europe that same weekend. It's his first time, and your father promised to go with him. You understand, don't you?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "My wedding, Mom? You're skipping my wedding for a vacation?" She sighed like I was being unreasonable. "We'll celebrate afterwards, sweetheart. Don't make this a big deal." That call ended with me staring at the wall, numb. Evan tried to comfort me, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. "They're your parents," he said softly. "They'll come around." But I knew better. The wedding day came, clear skies and soft music filling the air. My best friend Lena helped zip up my dress while tears welled in her eyes. "They should be here," she whispered. I smiled faintly. They made their choice. When I walked down the aisle, I didn't look for them. I knew those seats were empty. The ceremony was beautiful, intimate, and raw. Evan's vows made me cry harder than I expected. For once, I felt chosen, loved without conditions. Afterward, as guests laughed and danced under the lights, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "We'll FaceTime tomorrow. Enjoy your day, no apology, no warmth, just words." I deleted the message without replying. A week later, photos from their family vacation appeared on Facebook. Smiling faces in Paris, champagne glasses raised. Ryan tagged them all with the caption, "Family first." It hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Family first. Just not me. Months passed after the wedding, and I told myself I was over it. I poured everything into my work. Bigger projects, more clients, late nights sketching new concepts beside Evan while he edited photos. We were happy. At least, that's what I told myself. But the truth was, something inside me had gone cold when my parents didn't show up. It wasn't just disappointment. It was the realization that I could never fix what was broken. Then one afternoon, as I was finalizing a design proposal, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. I almost ignored it, but some reflex made me answer. "Mom?" Her voice trembled. "Sweetheart, we need your help, please." I froze. "What's wrong?" "It's your father," she said. "The restaurants, we're in trouble. We might lose everything." For a moment, I just stared at the floor. The same people who couldn't bother to attend my wedding were now calling me for help. I asked, "Where's Ryan?" "Overseas," she said quickly. "He's not answering our calls. You're the only one we can count on." The irony nearly made me laugh, but deep down, something in me, that old instinct to protect them, stirred again. Evan looked up from his desk. "You don't owe them this," he said gently. He was right. I didn't, but I still drove to their restaurant the next morning. The place was in shambles. Outdated menus, poor management, unpaid staff. I spent hours going through their finances, realizing just how bad it was. They were weeks away from bankruptcy. When Dad finally walked in, his pride was gone. He looked older, tired. "I should have listened to you," he said quietly. "You were always the smart one." For a second, I wanted to believe it was genuine. But the cynic in me whispered, "He only says that because he needs you." Still, I helped. For 3 months, I rebuilt their operations. New branding, redesigned spaces, digital marketing, even negotiating with investors. Slowly, the business began to breathe again. Mom was all smiles, thanking me constantly. "You saved us, Natalie," she said one night over dinner. "We're so proud of you." It was everything I'd wanted to hear for 35 years. But then I found out the truth. A few weeks later, I got a call from a contractor I'd hired for the redesign. He said the final payment hadn't cleared. "That's impossible," I said. "I wired the funds myself." He hesitated. "Your brother told us to reroute the payments through him. Said he was managing the finances." My stomach turned. I checked the accounts and found tens of thousands missing. Ryan had funneled the money to his personal ventures. Again. When I confronted my parents, Mom's reaction was immediate. "Ryan didn't mean to," she said, rushing to defend him. "He just got mixed up." "Mixed up?" I snapped. "He stole from his own family's business." Dad slammed his fist on the table. "Don't talk about your brother that way." I stared at them, the same script playing all over again. Ryan could burn the place down, and they'd still hand him the match. "I'm done," I said quietly. "For good this time." Mom reached for my hand. "Please, sweetheart, don't be dramatic." But I wasn't. I was finally clear. That night, I transferred my remaining shares of the restaurant to them, every cent of it, and sent an email to my accountant cutting all financial ties. Evan watched me hit send and said softly, "That's the look of freedom." I smiled, not with joy, but with relief. 2 months later, I got the message that would close the last chapter of that story forever. It was from Ryan. "Hey sis, Mom's in the hospital. Dad says you should come if you still care." The words hit like a stone. Not because I still sought their love, but because despite everything, she was still my mother. Evan looked at me. "You don't have to go," he said gently. "I know," I replied, grabbing my keys anyway. When I arrived at the hospital, Dad was in the hallway, his posture stiff, eyes red. He looked smaller than I remembered. He didn't say anything when I walked in, just nodded toward Mom's room. She was awake, pale, tubes running from her arms. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You came," I nodded. "Yeah, I came." There was silence for a long time. The sound of the heart monitor filled the room. Finally, she said, "We were wrong." I froze. "About what?" "About everything," she said. "You tried harder than any of us ever did. We took you for granted, and I don't know if we can ever make it right." Her voice cracked. And for the first time in years, I saw the woman I used to call Mom. Not the one who dismissed me, or protected Ryan, but someone human. I reached for her hand. "You don't need to fix it," I said softly. "Just rest," she smiled weakly. "You always were stronger than me." That was the last thing she said before she drifted back to sleep. A week later, she was gone. The funeral was quiet. A few family friends, some old employees, and Ryan standing awkwardly beside Dad. He couldn't even look me in the eye. When the service ended, Dad approached me. His voice was rough, broken. "Your mother loved you, Natalie. She just didn't know how to show it." I nodded. "I know," he looked down. "Ryan's leaving town for a while. He says he needs space." I just said, "That's probably best." Then he reached into his coat pocket and handed me a small, worn envelope. "Your mother left this for you." Inside was a folded letter and an old photograph. Me, about 7 years old, sitting at the counter of our first restaurant, smiling with flour on my nose. Her handwriting was shaky but clear. "You were always the heartbeat of this family. I just wish we'd listened before it was too late. Don't stop building beautiful things. You were meant to." Tears fell before I even realized it. I looked up at the sky that day, a soft autumn gray, and whispered, "I forgive you, not because they earned it, but because I needed to move on." When I went home, I framed the photo and placed it on my studio shelf, next to the first check I ever earned from a design client. Life moved forward. Evan and I opened a joint studio, his photography and my design merging into one space. Clients loved the energy, and for the first time, my world felt whole. Every now and then, Dad would call. The conversations were short, polite, almost tender. He never apologized directly, but maybe some things don't need words. As for Ryan, he stayed gone. A rumor reached me later that he'd opened a small restaurant in Florida. Maybe he finally learned what it meant to stand on his own. Sometimes I wonder what life might have been if they'd supported me earlier. If they'd believed in me before the success, before the headlines. But I don't dwell on that anymore, because the truth is, I didn't need their approval to become who I was meant to be. I just needed to stop waiting for it. And once I did, I realized something profound. Sometimes the love we chase the hardest is the love that keeps us from growing.